Today, we're stepping back into the dark. Two caving stories, two moments where adventure crossed an invisible line, and two reminders that underground, the smallest miscalculation becomes permanent. Viewer discretion is advised, because by now, you already know what makes caves terrifying. It's not the darkness. It's not even the tight squeezes. It's the moment a cave looks easy. Wide walking passages, tall ceilings, two comfortable levels, no ropes, no vertical pits, no technical gear, just a relaxed day underground. And then, at the very end, when you're comfortable, when you've stopped being cautious, the cave quietly asks you a question. Can you swim through me? That question was asked on November 26, 1971, near Bustamante, Mexico. Two teenage explorer scouts, Chris Cleveland, 18, and Bruce Stone, 17, entered a cave with a group. Not all of them came out. The trip began like any other holiday adventure. The group left Houston on Wednesday, November 23, heading south toward the limestone hills near Bustamante. It was a Thanksgiving break outing. Spirits were high, packs were loaded, laughter filled the van. They arrived Thursday morning, set up camp, planned 2 days of caving. Nothing in the mood suggested danger. It felt like a road trip, a memory in the making. On Friday morning, November 26, they entered a cave described by their 21-year-old leader, John. As simple, large walking passage, 2 levels, no technical hazards, just one feature at the end of the lower level, a spring-fed siphon. In caving terms, a siphon is an underwater section that blocks the tunnel. You're walking through a cave, and suddenly the rock doesn't end the passage, water does. The ceiling continues under that water, meaning the tunnel keeps going. But the air doesn't. If you want to reach the dry cave beyond, you must hold your breath, submerge, and follow the ceiling underwater until you surface on the other side. It sounds manageable, and that's the trap, because a siphon is rarely a straight underwater hallway. It dips, it widens, it hides deeper pockets, it forks subtly, and when water levels rise even slightly, what once was a 10-foot swim can become 25, or more. In this cave, the siphon averaged around 25 feet under certain conditions. At lower water, maybe 10 to 15 feet, but conditions matter, and underwater in a cave, you do not get second chances. The group was roughly 20 people and split into smaller parties. One group entered first, the other followed 10 minutes later. Everything was calm until they reached the end of the lower passage. There it was, a still pool, low rocky ceiling, the tunnel continuing underwater, and on the far side, clearly visible, dry passage. You could see more cave, and nothing tempts a caver like visible continuation. That's when the chain reaction began. John decided he would attempt the siphon. He undressed, took a light, inhaled deeply, and submerged. He followed the ceiling, carefully, staying to the right. Because this siphon had a right side and a wrong side, the right side led to the air-filled continuation. The left side dropped deeper, into confusing air pockets and false ceilings that could trick a swimmer into thinking they were close to safety. Surfaced successfully on the far side. He explored briefly, then he swam back, and whether he intended it or not, he had just demonstrated something powerful. It's doable. He answered questions, explained the distance, described following the roof of the tunnel, and as he began putting his clothes back on, his back turned to the group. At 1:15 p.m., Chris Cleveland moved. He said nothing, no announcement, no countdown. He just slipped into the water and disappeared. That detail is devastating, because in a cave, especially around water, time is everything. If you don't know exactly when someone went under, you don't know when to panic. And at 1:15 p.m., no one panicked. They assumed he would pop up in seconds. He didn't. Then Bruce Stone decided he wanted to try. The mood was still casual. No one sensed crisis. Explained the route again. This time, they attached a rope to Bruce. On paper, that sounds smart. But this rope would become something else entirely. It was entrusted to an inexperienced belayer. Signals were not clearly agreed upon. There was no strict time limit. No emergency protocol. A rope in a siphon is not magic. If the person holding it doesn't understand underwater tension, slack, or panic pulls, it becomes false confidence. Still, Bruce took a breath and went under. About 2 minutes passed. Then the rope jerked once. Then again. Then it came back untied. To the group waiting outside, that looked like success. Like he'd reached the other side. Untied it. Sent it back. So now, mentally, they believed both boys were safe beyond the siphon. Chris is through. Bruce is through. Everything's fine. They sat down. And they waited. And underground, waiting feels different. On the surface, 2 hours is inconvenient. In a cave, 2 hours is when your brain begins doing math you don't want to do. After about 2 hours, Ever became uneasy. Not terrified, not yet, just uneasy. He stripped down again and swam through the siphon to check. He surfaced on the far side. He called their names. Silence. He searched briefly. Nothing. No voices. No lights. No movement. He swam back, and that's when the mood shifted. From, they're exploring, to, they're missing. At around 6:15 p.m., most of the troop exited the cave to seek help. It was now nighttime. 2 teenagers were somewhere beyond an underwater tunnel, and the only way to reach them was to dive. In 1971, on a holiday weekend, in a foreign country, they contacted local authorities, the American consulate emergency lines, military contacts in the United States, Air Force, Army, Navy, even the State Department. Nothing immediate. Eventually, they reached spelunkers in St. Louis who knew cave divers. Divers in Laredo were also located. Help was moving, slowly, but even when divers arrived Saturday night, the cave imposed another rule. The siphon water was muddy. Disturbed silt had turned visibility to zero. And zero visibility cave diving is one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. They had to wait. Sunday morning, they tried again. This time, they found them. Both bodies were inside the siphon. Off to the left, in the deeper zone, about 40 to 50 feet from the entrance. One body was floating against the ceiling. The other nearby. That detail tells the story. They had not calmly followed the right-hand ceiling toward air. They had drifted left, into deeper water, into confusion, and in a submerged cave tunnel, disoriented and holding your breath. Panic is not emotion. Panic is physics. Panic burns oxygen faster. Panic steals direction. Panic removes the final chance. The divers concluded both boys likely panicked and drowned. Their bodies were recovered, and in a grim final detail, the divers refused to assist in carrying the bodies out of the cave. That task fell to scouts and members of another caving group. The analysis afterward was blunt. Large group, weak supervision, leader demonstrating unsafe behavior without precautions, a novice entering without being tracked, another novice allowed to follow. Flawed rope system, no clear explanation of the siphon's true shape and hazards. But the quietest mistake was the most deadly. No one fully explained what the siphon really was. And the boys never asked. And in caves, the question you don't ask is sometimes the last one you'll ever have. The signals were all wrong. Backward, confusing, unclear, and they hadn't discussed a time limit. A rope in a siphon isn't magic. You don't just attach a line and hope for the best. If the person handling it isn't trained, it becomes a false sense of security. Still, Bruce went in. Silently, determined, naive. 2 minutes later, the rope jerked. Twice. Then it came back untied. To the group waiting above, it looked like a signal of success. Like he had made it. Untied the rope, sent it back, and just like that, everyone breathed a little easier. Chris is through. Bruce is through. No problem. They sat. They waited. And that's when the cave began to change them. Time underground stretches differently than time on the surface. 2 hours above ground is inconvenient. 2 hours underground, it's a different beast. The mind begins to do math it shouldn't. Seconds feel like minutes. Minutes feel like hours. And every shadow, every bubble, every flicker of light begins to twist reality. After 2 hours, Ever felt it. A creeping dread, a subtle shift in the air. Something wasn't right. He stripped down again, swam through the siphon, called out their names. Nothing. Silence. Cold. Oppressive. He searched. Found nothing. And the weight of the realization hit. They were missing. Not exploring. Not adventuring. Missing. At 6:15 p.m., the remaining scouts made the hard choice. They left the cave. They ran for help. Night had fallen. Two teenage boys, somewhere in the dark, trapped beyond an underwater passage. And the only hope lay with specialized cave divers. Finding them wouldn't be simple. Not in 1971. Not on a holiday weekend. Not in a remote part of Mexico. They contacted officials, American consulate, emergency lines, Air Force, Army, Navy, even the State Department in Washington. Nothing. Finally, desperation led them to spelunkers in St. Louis who knew cave divers. Divers in Laredo were also located. Help was coming, slowly, complicatedly, layered in logistics and distance. And even once the divers arrived, the cave had one final lesson. The water in the siphon was disturbed, muddy, zero visibility cave diving, the stuff of nightmares, even for professionals. They had to wait until the morning, Sunday. The divers returned, and there they found the boys. Both bodies, both gone too far into the siphon, both trapped off to the left, in the deeper zone, 40 to 50 feet from the entrance. One floating against the ceiling, the other nearby. The detail says everything. This wasn't a calm, controlled underwater swim. This wasn't a minor misstep. Something went horribly wrong. They drifted. They turned the wrong way. And once you're in a submerged cave tunnel, disoriented, holding your breath, panic isn't just fear. Panic is physics. It burns oxygen faster. It steals your sense of direction. It obliterates your only chance. The divers concluded what everyone feared. The boys had panicked. They had drowned. And when their bodies were brought to the surface, the surreal part began. The divers refused to help remove the bodies. The job fell to other scouts, members of another caving group, exhausted, shocked, carrying the dead in a foreign country, on a holiday weekend, after 2 days of chaotic, frustrating communication. The analysis was mercilessly clear. 5 direct errors led to tragedy. 1. A large, inexperienced group with weak supervision. Average, the leader, was responsible for 14 people. The group was inadequately prepared, ill-equipped, inexperienced, and far too casual about traveling and caving in Mexico. 2. The leader set the tone. Ever entered the siphon without precautions. He demonstrated it casually, and the group read that as safe. 3. Chris went without telling anyone. Silent, untracked, unaware of the risk he carried. 4. Bruce was allowed to follow. A total novice, with a rope system that was mismanaged. Signals backwards. No safety time limit. 5. Nobody explained the siphon's real hazards. No one described its deceptive curves, its air pockets, its drop-offs. The quietest mistake, the one that killed. No one fully explained the siphon. The boys never asked, and in caves, the question you fail to ask can be the last one you ever hear. Number 3. Chris went without anyone knowing. A novice, silent, unseen. While the leader's back was turned, while instructions lingered half-spoken, Chris made his move. Step by step, he disappeared beneath the cave's surface. Number 4. Bruce followed. Inexperienced, unprepared. The rope system was flawed. Backward signals, no safety time, no fail-safes. Confidence became illusion. Trust became a gamble. Number 5. The quiet killer. No one explained the siphon's treacherous geometry. Its twists, its dips, its hidden deep pockets. The boys weren't taught the true dangers, and they didn't ask. And that, silently, is what kills. Fast forward, rolling hills of Tennessee. Limestone ridges, weathered, holding secrets for centuries. A tiny, unmarked opening, dismissed as a fox den. On Sunday, February 25, 1973, it would claim attention. 17-year-old Don and his younger companion stood at the threshold. At first, the cave welcomed them. 50 feet in, the ground level was simple. Easy walking, stoop walking, confidence building, a false sense of safety. Then the cave changed. What appeared was a slot, a vertical crack so narrow even a slender person must turn sideways. No step over, no casual pass. The cave whispered, "Commit completely or turn back." The boys chose to commit. He called down to Don. His voice, trembling and raw, carried a new weight of understanding. The cave had just revealed its true peril. Now it was Don's turn. But for Don, the task was impossible. Fatigue, lack of technique, and the unforgiving geometry of the slot left him stranded at the bottom, gazing up at a vertical highway of rope that promised only uncertainty. Around him, passages twisted deeper into the earth, offering no escape toward sky, toward air, toward safety. 17 years old, trapped underground, Don made a choice. He did not panic. He did not waste energy on futile climbing attempts. He conserved every ounce of strength, waiting, trusting that help would arrive. Above, the older boy ran, breathless, to alert authorities. The Knox County Rescue Squad received the call, then contacted the man whose name would define the rescue, Jim Wilson, a seasoned spelunker, whose expertise in vertical cave rescues bordered on legendary. Wilson arrived at the scene to find a situation that tested every principle of careful caving. The slot was narrow, the descent zigzagging, the improvised log anchor questionable at best. Below, a teenager shivered in the earth's cool embrace, trapped in a complex network of limestone. Connie Pierce, slender and experienced, joined Wilson. Together, they surveyed the slot and its precarious setup. Every line, every anchor, every angle required careful calculation. The belay line was secondary, a safety net against potential failure. In cave rescue, you plan for every anchor to fail and prepare for the consequences. Wilson descended into the pit. What he found was unnerving, but not what one might expect. Don, uninjured, yet trembling uncontrollably. Hours of immobility in the cave's constant cool temperature had begun to sap his core heat. 50-degree Tennessee winter air is manageable above ground, but underground, time works differently. Cold seeps, strength fades, panic rises. A simple denim jacket was slipped over Don's shoulders, a small gesture in the narrative, yet critical. Against hypothermia, Wilson rigged him into a Jumar, the mechanical ascending device designed to grip on the upstroke and slide freely when repositioned. The Mitchell system, named for its creator, allowed exhausted or inexperienced climbers to ascend safely under controlled tension. With guidance, Don began to climb. 60 feet of twisting, zigzagging rope that had seemed insurmountable now yielded to deliberate movement. Each pull brought blood back to cold muscles. Each breath steadied by adrenaline. The constriction loomed, the 8-inch slot that had challenged Don hours earlier. The cave's physics, which had aided descent, now worked against ascent. Every movement had to overcome the body's natural recoil from the enclosed space. For 20 painstaking minutes, Don inched through the constriction, guided by Connie above, Wilson below. Inches at a time, breaths measured, focus unwavering. Equipment and technique triumphed over panic. Finally, the slot relented. Don emerged into a small recess, a brief moment of reprieve before the final climb to the surface. And then, the outside. February daylight struck his face. The air tasted sweet. For the first time in hours, true safety. From the initial call to the Knox County Rescue Squad until Don stepped into sunlight, 6 hours had passed. Jim Wilson's report would later convey the understated, precise analysis of an experienced caver. Confronting near tragedy, inexperience had caused the incident, but inexperience is rarely straightforward. The boys had knowledge. They understood rope work, anchors, and mountaineering basics, but lacked critical context, cave-specific risks, environmental nuances, and the sheer unforgiving nature of confined vertical spaces. The slot twisted like a frozen lightning bolt. 20 feet down, opening into a 30-foot tall crevice. Limestone walls pressed close, touching both sides at once. Claustrophobia became reality, not theory. They were not true spelunkers. They carried partial knowledge, gleaned from books and magazines. A rope, a crude anchor, a small log wedged as a makeshift lifeline. The physics seemed simple. Tie rope, descend, hand over hand, gravity on their side. The older boy went first. Rope running through a carabiner wrap, or maybe a single brake bar setup. The mechanics would later be scrutinized. Critical details. Life and death in the margins. 60 feet down, the crevice opened into branching passages, like fingers of a hidden hand. The older boy called up. The way was clear. Don began his descent. Gravity worked deceptively. Down was commitment. Up would require strength, skill, technique. Tools they did not possess. At the bottom, triumph briefly flickered. Two young adventurers had conquered a secret vertical passage. Then the return. 60 feet of rope, twisting zigzag. No mechanical advantage. No Jumars. Just youth, determination, and exhaustion. Hand over hand, inch by inch, muscle screaming, fingers raw. 60 feet became a gauntlet. The constriction at the top mocked him. 8 inches of rock pressed against his body. Gravity tugged insistently downward. The human body, remarkable as it is, was not built for this. 8 inches of stone, 60 feet of rope, a vertical slot demanding contortion, strength, endurance. And all while fighting exhaustion, cold, and fear. For a moment, he froze. Breath shallow, heart racing. The cave demanded respect, and now he understood its question. Can you rise again? For what must have felt like an eternity, he struggled in that stone vise, pressed in from all sides. Trapped between the unyielding walls of the cave and the relentless pull of gravity. Forward was impossible. Backward offered no mercy. Each movement scraped against the cold limestone. Every breath came shallow and jagged. Inch by inch, with a mix of desperation, technique, and stubborn determination, he forced his body through the narrow passage, finally squeezing free. What saved Dawn was not luck alone. It was the razor-thin margin between partial knowledge and complete ignorance, between youth and total exhaustion, between a cave that seemed conquerable and one that was nearly impossible to survive without skill, patience, and careful execution.